Do we have to wait a second for it to go?
It's fine, I think.
Well, then let's go live here.
There you go.
Live on Instagram. We live everywhere else.
Everywhere else.
Okay. Welcome to the Dad University Live Show. Glad to have you guys back. It's been an interesting week. Tons of stuff going on, as always. We keep busy over here, and as you can see, it is exactly 4 p.m. We are very punctual and very on time. I stress about it all the time. That's kind of how I roll. So we want to make sure we give you a good show. If you come on and you've got questions, please feel free to write them. We are across Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and Periscope Twitter. So if you're visiting us on those, please go ahead and write your questions in, and we'll be sure to get to them. Interesting topic that I want to cover for today. And of course, I will, answer people's questions as they come on, and if you have questions, please go ahead and ask them. Hey, Daddy Time, how's it going? Daddy Time book. The topic I wanted to cover today is about allowing other people to affect your emotions and your state. And this is something that I work on a lot. I work on this with my kids. I work on it personally. I did a podcast or a video. I did both, a video and a podcast. And it was called Everybody is Responsible for My Happiness and Everybody Causes My Pain. And obviously it had a little bit of sarcasm there. But the idea is that we consistently allow others to affect how we feel. And I want to teach my children, and I want other people to teach their children, that they are in control of their emotions, and they're in control of how they feel, and they are in control of how they react to things. So I see questions coming up. Nathan, Maverick, hello. I will definitely get to the questions for sure. Just talking about allowing your children and yourself to be affected by other people. And this is a big topic. This is something that came up recently for me. And I'll give you an example, and this may be something that you can say to your spouse says to you, you say it to your kids, and that's saying, you make me so upset. Or vice versa, you might say, you know what, you just made me so happy. So both of those are situations in which you're allowing somebody else and what they do, what they say, to affect your emotions. And so I want to get back to that. I'm going to talk to that, but we've got some questions that I want to get to. So Nathan, going to be a first-time dad in July. Congratulations. It can be both scary and exciting. I think it's something that is to be expected, but congratulations. It is a very exciting thing. But yeah, when you don't know something, you don't know what to expect, you've never done it before, you feel like it can be overwhelming. But you're going to be okay. I promise. It's, we all don't know what to do. And that's part of what this channel is about, and this live show is to help you. So if you have questions about it, be happy to answer. So Maverick asks, what should I expect the first day when bringing my baby boy home? So that's the first question. I think you shouldn't have expectations. And I know that sounds easier than not. I recall with my wife, we were so excited. We had our first child. We came home from the hospital, and we got home from the hospital, and we were sort of sitting there, and it was just us two with the baby. We had the baby in a car seat that we brought home. We put it on the bed. We looked at each other, and we said, now what do we do? Okay, great. We have this baby. Now what do we do with it? And I remember joking and saying, I think our job is just to make sure it survives. So we've got to make sure it eats. We have to make sure we change the diaper. We have to make sure we love it, and it sleeps. And in the beginning, that's kind of what it is. I think that when you first bring the baby home, you don't really know what to expect, and everybody, especially if you have family around, everyone wants to see the baby. It's just this exciting time. But I will say it's okay to take some time for yourself. Take some time for you and with your wife or significant other to enjoy that time. And there is sometimes a little honeymoon phase that happens where the baby actually, doesn't make much noise, doesn't cry very much, is eating on a schedule, and then that stuff can kind of get a little bit messed up once in a while. So I think maybe is not to have too many expectations, and that's hard, but I think you're going to be okay and you're going to be good. And then a follow up, or the next question was, what kind of things will I have to do to help out mom and the little boy? And that's a great question, because you are already thinking in the right way, is that of what kinds of things you can do to help out. So if mom is breastfeeding and mom might be the primary caretaker, which often happens, hey mommy tribe, my mommy tribe, how you doing? If mom is the caretaker, the primary caretaker, your job then is to sort of help out. And granted, it is a 50-50 deal, not in that way, but let's say she's breastfeeding, then your job would be to make sure that she's comfortable, or to go grab the baby and bring the baby over. A lot of things like that. I think the other thing too is to not have too many expectations, but not also to put the expectations on your spouse. Is so you might have some idea of what she is supposed to be doing. Maybe you'd say you're going to work and she's at home with the baby, and you feel like there's certain things that should be done. Example, cleaning, making dinner, whatever. I've made some videos about this. I think the best thing you can probably do is have that conversation and actually plan those things out. So instead of having the expectations without any communication, it's actually writing it down and having a plan and having a schedule, literally writing down and say, hey, on Monday, here's what I'm responsible for. On Monday, here's what you're responsible for. And do that for every day of the week. And I mean, literally down to like, you're going to get the feedings or you're not. And if you are the one who's working full time and the other person's not, maybe you do need to get more sleep during the week, but then on the weekends, she gets to sleep or vice versa. You have to communicate. And I think that's something that people don't. And so what you can also do is ask her that question. So the question that you just asked of what kind of things can you do to help out, ask her that question. Ask her, what can I do to help you out? What can I do to make the situation better? That is a question that women love. Now, there's certain women that might have difficulty with the question, and they might say, nothing, I'm good, because they have difficulty asking for help. I posed that question to a group of women, and they had answers all over the board. Some women, no problem, I'll ask him for help if I need it. Other women, no way, I won't ask him for help. I should know he doesn't expect things of me, I don't expect things of him. So, as you can tell, I'm not short for words. So, you have to communicate with her about that. Some other questions coming up. Hassan, good to see you. Hey, how do you balance work, baby time, wife time, and going to gym in a day? Great question. You do your best. You don't get a lot of sleep, and you get up really early. That's the real question, or that's the real answer. So I can tell you, when my first child was born, both my wife and I went to a gym. We both were members of a gym, and we worked. She took some time off, but going to the gym as an example, I got to go the first shift, I came back, and then she went, And then by the time she came back, I was off to work, and so you schedule around that. You know, it is difficult that if you're both working, then you have to have somebody watching the baby, but you have to communicate. And how you balance it also is to have the expectation that you can't be perfect at all of them all the time. So you are not going to be a perfect employee, a perfect husband, and a perfect dad all in the same day. It's very hard to do all those. Now, you might, hey, you were staying late for work for a couple days, so you know what? Maybe you got to spend a little bit more time with your wife, or you know what? I need to spend some time with the child now. I haven't done that, or vice versa. Or maybe you've spent a ton of time with the child and you're neglecting your work, and that's affecting you at work. You have to learn how to do that. And instead of, I like to call it work-life harmony instead of work-life balance. And so instead of thinking of how you have to actually give something up in order to get something else, you actually are trying to figure out how you can work all of these together. And I can tell you that it's not always easy, but I did. I mean, as somebody, I worked full time. I wanted to make sure that I was home for my child, my first child, and especially for dinner. And then I started pulling away a little bit because I had a ton of stuff to do at work. And my wife had that conversation with me and said, hey, I feel like it's really important that we have dinners together, which I had always believed was the case. So she kind of put me in my place a little bit, and then I made sure that I was home. So I think, again, you have to communicate that about what is, what's really important and what is it that you guys both need. Your wife might have her own things that she needs and her own time that she wants to do something, and you have your own time. But what you find and what you realize is that things shift, things change. Instead of going to the gym, we each save 10, 15 minutes by working out at home, and so that was quicker and we were able to do that. So hope that answers the question. Another question, Nathan, what should I do to help my wife out at night? Which I think answered is it's interesting. I always felt like I had to be there at night, and it was my mother who said this and said, well, is there a reason why both of you should be zombies the next day? If one is not working and the other one is, or you have different schedules, that maybe you don't need to both be up in the middle of the night doing the feeding. That might be something that you don't need to do. I felt lucky in that my wife, at the time when she wasn't working, made sure that she just handled the things at night, and so I ended up getting a decent night's sleep in those times. And then as an exchange, I would take the kids in the early morning on a weekend, or she'd have a day by herself or whatever, and that was sort of how we would balance it. But you just got to find out, what works for you. And that's hard. It's different for everybody. So I hope that helps. Another question. I guess I'll get back to my subject later. There's questions coming in, which is great. I appreciate you guys having some questions. How can dads bond with their little girl? Depends on the age, of course. With my daughter, starting at age 6 or 5, maybe 5, I started doing camping weekends with the YMCA. That was a great bonding experience. But even before that, it's one-on-one time. Bonding is one-on-one time. It is playing, it's reading. When you have a newborn or you have a young child, it's bath time, it's feeding, it's spending the time, it's affection, and that's what bonds with the child. And it's not the quantity of the time, it is the quality of the time. So if you are busy, that time is not going to allow you, if you're on your phone or you've got work to do or something, it's going to be difficult to really have quality time with your child. So that's, I think, what you got to do is just try to find those quality things. And in the beginning, that quality, like I said, is feeding, it's bathing, it's changing even when you're changing the child, that is a time of bonding. You're smiling, you're giving them a toy to hold. There's all kinds of stuff that you can do when you're changing the babies, like you're talking to the child, you're maybe tickling them, you're giving them affection and kissing them. So there's a lot of stuff that you can do that you bond with the baby or bond with the child. So I think that's a good one, but I do like that topic. Let's see. Caddy Wampus. My boy is 12 weeks old, and we're trying out baby education videos. He is okay with them, but always wants to watch the original Pokemon. The colors, music is great. Is this okay? I'm not upset. I grew up with it. So 12 weeks old. Everybody has their own opinion about this. My wife and I were both on the same page about this, is that we really didn't like or didn't want to put our children in front of the screen. That was us. And you've got to find what works for you. Some parents, they obviously use it more than others. At 12 weeks old, at 3 months, we did baby sign language. That was really helpful. The baby sign language was helpful, and I personally would say that the cartoons and some of the other things, I would try to avoid those. I think if you feel like the material is educational, you will know that. But yeah, of course, they like the colors and the stimulation. I would talk to the pediatrician and see if that's okay. Little babies and such are only supposed to get very little screen time just because of their eyes and those kinds of things and the brain adjustment. So I would talk to the pediatrician. I mean, I've heard numbers that when they're that little, there's no more than 30 minutes of screen time a day. Yet, you will see somebody in a restaurant and they have a baby, and the baby is on for 45 minutes to an hour. I'm guessing that's not even the minimum amount of their screen time. So, hey, Angel, Poppy Preschool, right on. So I mean, me personally, I don't like the screen time when they're that young. I don't think it's that valuable. I'd be more inclined to let them have flashcards or things to do with their hands and things like that, and the little boxes and toys and trinkets and things like that. I would have a tendency to try to do more of that versus the video. Now, what happens is that then often requires us to be interactive with them, and so that's the choice that you have to make, and if you have that time or not. And for many parents, they don't have the time, and quite frankly, or they don't make the time, and so it's a lot easier to put them in front of the video. But I personally, it's not my thing. Liddell, good to see you. Let me try to get this. My biggest challenge is that we are not married and living separately and having a baby in June. There are a few relationship examples to follow here. Should I just visit often? Any advice? So I'm making the assumption that you are not together. Maybe if you're still on, you can let us know if you are still together or you are not, or if there's not an ability to live together or you don't plan to be together. Instagram is freezing up a little. We're getting another notification there. So I have a video that I recently did about unplanned pregnancy. And I don't know if that's the situation or not, but a lot of the topics that I've talked about in that, and you can go back, it was a couple episodes ago, a lot of the topics are about that and how you're in this situation, it is what it is, and you need to realize that you are 50% of that child. Now, of course, there are circumstances where, you don't get along or you don't want to be around the person or whatever. But this is my opinion. This is how I'm suggesting to handle it. It's not gospel. You've got to find out what works for you. But personally, I would make every effort to be in that child's life as much as you can. they are going to benefit from you being in their life. Whether you can call it, a mistake, a blessing, however you want to choose, you are 50% of that child's parent. So it could be not practical. The woman might say, well, hey, I'm going to raise the child myself. Me personally, I would have difficulty with that, and especially now looking back at my children, that there is no way that I could not be in their lives half the time. And I think the value that they receive from me being in their lives and the value I receive from being in their lives is it's so important. So if it is possible, I don't think it is just about you visiting often. I would be inclined to say you take care of the baby half the time. Now, you have to then do what works for you. But that's, in a perfect world, you are half that child's parent. Yes, she's carrying the baby, and so she has a little bit more physical responsibility than you do as far as childbirth. But that's an important one, and that child is going to just really benefit, and quite frankly, you will too. There are things about maturity and responsibility and those kinds of things that I think it's really important for these kids to have fathers, and sometimes that's difficult and it's impractical and the situation might be hard to figure out, but I would let that person know that you want to do everything you can to be in their life. Take the baby half the time. So, yeah, Liddell, I think it's a great choice. The response was that I plan to be there all the time, and I think that's a good attitude. If you go into it with a positive attitude, it's going to be a positive experience. And that's where I think my video, if you go back and watch the unplanned pregnancy video, if you look at the thumbnail or the cover, it's like it's like the apocalypse. That was the idea behind this, that people think that their world is ending often, or they think it's crumbling. And, granted, I wasn't in that situation, but if I can try to put myself in that situation of like, how would I want me to be, and how would I want, if I was the child, how would I want my father to be? That's what you look at. And so you look at it from the child's point of view of how much benefit they're going to get from you being there. And so the man up is, I think it's very respectable, and I think there's a lot of value in that because there's a lot of fathers who aren't doing that. So that's a good one. Thank you, Liddell. Yeah. So thank you guys. How is Instagram? Instagram, I think should be okay. We have had some connectivity issues, but I think we're doing okay. So if you guys got questions, write them down. Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, Instagram. We're all over the world. Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, this is fun. I enjoy doing this. I know sometimes I've gotten trying to get some feedback on the time, because I know that some people, like at least on the West Coast, it's kind of hard to get away from work, and but we're catering to some of the East Coast and some of the international people. So I wanted to go back to the topic, and and if you guys have questions, throw them in there, and we'll try to get to them. But I want to keep going. And so the topic that I was dealing with was about allowing other people to affect how you feel. And this is so big. And so when our children are upset, or even we are upset, and we blame how we feel, and it could be upset, it could also be happiness, and we blame it on another person, we are giving them power. And hey, John, I will answer that question. It's a great question. I'll be there in a second. When we allow somebody to affect how we feel, we give them the power. And so I feel like this is kind of a problem in society. I think it's a macro problem, is that everybody is so sensitive. Maybe that's the way that we can push it. Whether it is political, whether it is something that strikes at your heart, whether it is something about your family, we get very, very emotional, positive, negative, whatever, based on what other people do and what other people say. And I've been working very, very hard at this, and I feel like if I can get my kids to realize that they have complete control over their mood, they have complete control over their emotions. If somebody comes at you, you get to decide whether that upsets you or you're not going to be affected or anything. If you're a happy, jolly person, you can continue to be a happy, jolly person regardless of what somebody says. Thanks, Bobby. I appreciate that. Just hitting on topics that other people are not. That's what we're trying to do. And but this idea of taking control of your mood and taking control of your emotions, we have such a power, and we have such a power to teach our children, so that when we blame our children, and this will happen if you have very young children, this will happen as they get older, it'll even happen as they're a baby, but your children will be doing something, they'll do something that will, quote, upset you. And you have an option to not react in that way. You have an option to control how you respond to it. And so if we can teach children, and essentially what I try to do is that maybe, let's say my children do something that is, I just don't approve of, it's something not good. If I get really upset, they see that the things that they are doing upset me. And it's not their responsibility. It's that maybe my responsibility. It doesn't mean what they did was okay. I'm not even going there. But it's not their responsibility of how I feel. That's mine. And so what will happen is, I've had things where, like, my children will say something and they'll be like, "Oh, that made me so upset," or "What she said made me so upset." And what I'll do is I'll try to catch them right there and say, "Now," and this is granted, this is me being Dad University. It's, did they make you upset, or did you decide to get upset? And when you repeatedly say that, and then it's said back to me, and I've been caught on it myself, where I get upset about something, I can't believe that person did that. And my kids have actually called me out and say, "Well, did you decide to get upset, or did they make you upset?" And so that is a very, very powerful thing, that if we can teach our children that they can choose their mood, and I've done a video about this, I've also done the podcast, it's very, very powerful. And I want people to understand that that is something that they have control over. So it's a topic that I'm going to come back to over and over again, but I want to get to some of these questions because I appreciate you guys coming on, and I want to get these questions answered. John asks, I'm concerned of having issues being jealous of the baby's bond with the wife. Absolutely legitimate. So here's what happens. Baby's born, baby gets attention, common, very common. If you have a pet, the pet even gets more attention than you do. And so the family, the extended family, will give more attention to the baby. And so there are times where you might even kind of resent the baby a little bit, say that out loud, that, gosh, I was getting all this attention before, and now there's this little thing here, and I'm not getting the attention. So it's real, and it's good that you're noticing it, and there's kind of two things in play here, and I'm not sure, maybe you can answer. It's one is you are upset because you're not getting as much attention from your wife. That's one. The other is you want to bond with the baby and you feel like your wife is bonding with the baby and you're not. I can speak to both of those. The first one about the baby getting more attention than you, you're just going to have to deal with that. It's kind of the reality. And so what you can do is you can try to be there in support of your wife. You can try to help her in how you can. I talked a little bit about this earlier. those are all things that you can try to do, and so that she feels supported and she feels. But yes, there's no question, especially right when the baby is born. Intimacy might slow down, affection might slow down, attention might slow down. All of those things happen, and so part of it is communication. And it's not blame. You got to make sure that you're not complaining and you're not blaming, and you are being supportive and understanding. And there might be other ways that you can help out that would be more supportive of that. So I think that's something you can do. As far as the wife bonding with the baby, maybe and you're not. I had this issue, and part of the reason I had that was that my wife spent more time with our first child than I did. No question. I was working full time. She was home most of the day, and so she was with the baby. She was bathing and feeding and breastfeeding, and of course the baby is going to have a great bond with them. And so that was something that I kind of had to deal with. And so what I needed to do was I needed to, spend that time bonding. And so, which I answered a question of a couple ways to do that. It's bathing, it's clothing, it's changing, it's feeding, it's affection, it's all of those things. And it takes time. The other thing I would suggest is you have some one-on-one time with the child. So those are things that are going to be really, really important. So I hope that answers the question. Follow up if it didn't answer the question. I'd be happy to do more. M. Albert, I'm concerned with my time as a small business owner and want to spend as much time with my baby. Any advice on managing my time? Yes, because I am an entrepreneur and I own my own business as well. So, here's what you do first. Actually, I have a video on this. I think you can go back. I'm not sure what episode, but it's time management and or work-life balance. There's a couple of stuff we've done on work-life balance. Also, the podcast. We've had a podcast for, almost over 4 years. Before it was called the Dudes to Dads podcast, but we're changing the name to Dad University, but continuing on with the same thing. So you can go back at some of those episodes as well. You can go through the website, daduniversity.com. You can check out the podcast because it's extended versions of kind of like what the videos are. And so you can look through some of those older episodes, and we talk a lot about similar topics, but with just in a much more extensive way. So the first thing I would say is you need to take inventory of your time. What I mean by that is, are you on social media? Are you watching TV? Are you doing some other activities? And find out, take some inventory of yourself. So take some inventory on what it is that you are currently spending your time on, and really take a look at that. Where you're like, no, I don't really watch TV. I might say this, but then meanwhile I'm on YouTube watching other videos. So you've got to really be realistic about that, and you write it down. And the other thing I'd say is that you schedule it. And so you schedule time with your wife or significant other. You schedule time with your baby. You schedule time with your business. And I said this before, I'll say it again. I'm going to say it many times. You can't be an amazing business person, an amazing husband, an amazing dad, an amazing friend or son or whatever else all the time across everything. You have to look at those things, and sometimes a little, they might need to be a little separate. Where, one day you're a really good employee, but maybe you didn't pay attention to your wife, or maybe you didn't hang out with your kids, or you're traveling, and then all of a sudden you come back and then you spend that quality time with your child. So you have to, and it's the work-life harmony. What's up, Alan? Oh, 2 Allens. How are you guys? Good to see you. Both of those, or I say working in harmony is one of those things that dads struggle with, as do moms, but dads struggle with all the time. And it's something that you've got to figure out what works for you. But like I said, you can't be perfect at all of them all the time. you've got to figure out your priority. And I can tell you, I mean, before I had children, I'd stay at work, late into the night. I'd get up early, weekends, whatever. And the truth is that my priorities changed a bit. I mean, I still work very hard. I try to work a little smarter than harder. But yeah, I have to make that time. It's very valuable for me. And you can say you want something, but unless you take action, it's just not going to happen. So you can say, well, I want to spend more time with my family, but I can't because I'm working all the time. You have control over it, especially if you're your own business owner. So you've got to map that out, write what you're spending your time on, and then see what works. And you'll see, well, hey, maybe I haven't gone out on a date with my wife in a while. I probably should spend a little bit more time with her. I think that would work. Thank you, John. John's watching every week, enjoys the channel. Thank you, appreciate that. Hope you guys are coming back. Come back for more. We've got the podcast now, the Dad University podcast we've been doing for a long time. We've got the weekly videos on Thursdays, and then now we have the live show on Tuesdays. So I'm glad you guys are hanging in there. We're gonna have tons of content for everybody. So I want to answer everybody's questions. Mike, how can I get closer to my girlfriend's daughter who is 10? So thank you for your advice. Great question. So I think, obviously you're going to want to talk to your girlfriend. This is something, if it is going to be long term and you see yourself, becoming, whether it is you're going to get married or you're going to be there long term, then obviously this is something that you want to get closer to her. And at 10, she obviously already has her own opinions and stuff. I don't know the situation as far as the father, but either way, I would be very respectful of the father. And one of the things that I've heard said is like, hey, I'm never going, I'm not here to try to replace or I'm not here to replace your birth father, but I'd certainly love if I can be a dad to you or a father figure to you, And at 10, you can kind of have those conversations of saying like, listen, I'd like to have a closer relationship with you. I really enjoy your time and I really want to get to know you. So one of the things you can do is like find out what she really likes to do. And it could be something really, that you just have no interest whatsoever. It could be from playing games to, sports, to music, to art, to whatever. Find out what she's really interested in and then do that with her and spend some time and ask your girlfriend and, hey, is it okay if we have some one-on-one time? I'd love to take her out. Hey, there's this, this music playing, or hey, there's this sporting event. I'd love to take her out. Would you be okay with that? Or, so, you all three spending time together is cool. But if she feels good about it, your girlfriend feels good about it, and the daughter does, then spending that time is what's going to make you closer, and it's relating to her. And I don't know the situation. There could be all kinds of things. One of the number one things I was going to talk about that today, so thank you for the segue, is empathy. So if you're familiar with empathy, maybe you're not. Empathy is putting yourself in somebody else's shoes or putting yourself in their situation so that you can see things from their perspective. And that is something that you absolutely can do for the 10-year-old. You can try to put yourself in, it may be, it may be something where, you can kind of look at things from her perspective and say, okay, well, I've got, she's looking at me, she doesn't really know me, maybe I need to be, ease into this, but really, it's about trying to look at it from her perspective and try to understand her. Don't try to force anything as far as what, and it's also up to your girlfriend. Obviously that's her daughter. And I said, always be respectful of her mom, the girlfriend, but also of any of the other people in her life. So if her dad or such. that was something that I witnessed with my wife has a story where the man who came into her life as now her dad was very respectful towards her birth dad, and that was something she really valued, and so it's just something that as a child you really value, even if they don't have a great relationship, you never want to say negative things, you never want to do anything like that. If anything, you just don't, it's not a topic that comes up. So I think spending time with her, empathy, looking at things from her perspective is going to be important. And you just got to spend that time. You got to put in the effort and do things that she enjoys. Let's see if I can, there's a lot coming in. Let's see. So Liddell, about how to control your emotions. What if somebody shares their feelings towards you and this hurts your feelings? How to acknowledge their feelings but not let it affect your emotions. Well, that's exactly kind of what I'm saying is you say, what if somebody shares something with you and it hurts your feelings? What I'm saying is it shouldn't. You don't allow it to hurt your feelings. But you can acknowledge. So one thing you can say is, hey, I appreciate you telling me that, and I'll take that into consideration. That's an easy way of just saying, hey, thanks for telling me, and I appreciate that. That's it. Now, that's part of it is when when somebody says something or does something and it affects us. Most people don't look within themselves to understand why is it affecting me. Why is what this person is saying or doing affecting me? Instead, we look at the other person and we say, how can they say that? That's horrible, or that's so mean. Or, and here's the thing, it doesn't make what they said right, it doesn't make it that something shouldn't happen, whatever. But we have the ability to interpret, and that's what all we're doing day in and day out is interpreting what other people are saying and how it's going to affect us. The worst enemy we have is our brains because we have an inability to control it, and it's not even really about controlling our emotions. It's really just shouldn't affect them. And hey, I'm not saying I'm perfect at this by any means. It's not something that's easy to do. But I remind myself constantly when something happens or somebody has said something, that it's not a reflection of me. That's something that they're going on. That's something that they're dealing with. It's like I was driving the other day. I was with my kids actually, and I made a wrong. I accidentally cut somebody off. Like it was my fault. I merged into a lane. I didn't see the car. And this person honks, flips me off. Like, they were so pissed off. And they pull up, they roll down the window, and they're like, you mother, blah, blah, blah. They're going off on me. I just turned around, meanwhile, I had my kids in there. I said, hey, listen, I'm so sorry that I apologize. I'm really, really sorry. That's it. And so my kids were right there, and that was obviously an important reason. I don't know that I would have handled it any differently, but I had thought about it obviously right then, and I said, they were like, gosh, that person was angry. I said, you know what? They probably were having a really bad day. And, things affect you more when you're having a bad day. And the fact is that I was having a good day. I was hanging out with my kids. We're actually driving near the beach area. It wasn't going to affect me. I wasn't certainly going to allow. It was my mistake. I apologized for it. But I could get out of the car and I could get upset with the person. How dare you yell at me and flip your finger off? If anything, it was like the fact that there was children in the car and they were doing something. But I wasn't going to allow that to affect me. And now having that ability, just because I've practiced and practiced and practiced. Now, my kids will know what buttons to push. My wife knows what buttons to push. But having that muscle and building that muscle over time, it's so valuable. If you look at some of these gurus, these spiritual gurus and mystics and all of these, and Gandhi and what, you could do whatever you want to them. They are not going to be phased. Even as we now go into this online world, imagine our children not being affected by what other people are saying or doing. That's what bullying is. And then the fact is that I try to teach them and say, hey, if somebody's really mean to you at school, somebody is probably being really mean to them. And so my kids have started to sort of interpret that and understand that when somebody else is mean or somebody else does something, it's, they have to look and see if it's something that they were doing, but it's ultimately that person's choice to get upset, and they have that option as well. So, yeah, great questions. Hope that answers it. We've got about 5 minutes left. So if you have any final questions or you've got any things you guys want to ask, go ahead. There was one up there. I'm newly in the Air Force and I'm expecting to be deployed sometime next year. My son is projected to be born in December. How can I handle the challenge of being away from him for so long, so early on? Yeah, that's tough. I don't have experience as far as being away for that long. I think how do you handle it? Maybe you can, do FaceTimes or, live video chats, and you can do that and sort of, and doing that. And quite frankly, then you might just, when you come back, you'll have to make up that time. You're serving the country, which is incredible. And so you're doing something noble. And then when you come back, you're sort of making up for that lost time, if that's something you need to do. But kids are fairly resilient, and the fact is that they may not remember they won't remember from 0 to 6 months. If anything, yes, it's important for you to establish the bond, but you can probably do that fairly well when you get back. And if you're able to make that connection and you're able to spend that time, that can happen. I've seen these situations, even as a child gets older. I was talking with a gentleman once, and he said that when he was younger, and granted it wasn't a newborn, but when he was younger, his dad, he only got to spend a weekend a month, or a weekend every other month or something. It was very rarely, just all growing up with his dad. And what he said, though, is that the time he was with his dad was of such good quality. They had deep conversations. They got to do things that it was meaningful for him, that he now, as an adult, and he's my age, has an amazing relationship with his father. And he thinks of his father in a very positive way. He didn't have custody of him, parents divorced, but it was the quality of the time. It wasn't the quantity. And so if you can make that time that you do get to spend when you come home, and you're attentive and you're involved and you're with them and you're spending that time, it's going to be okay. And like this gentleman, he thinks really highly of his father. They have a great bond. And he said, he got to spend so little time with him as a kid, but it's just great, because he just, all the time that he did spend was just, he remembers and values that. And so, sometimes it's the daily mundane stuff that's the stuff that you don't really care to remember. It's these special occasions and the conversations and the doing things together and the experiences. And, some people call that like, being a Disneyland dad, because you get to do all the fun stuff. Yeah, it could be. Mike asked, do you believe that early gender tests from the internet are accurate? I'll be honest, I'm not really familiar with them. So I don't know how, I'm not sure how. I'll have to look at that and look into that. I guess if there's some people doing that. Otherwise, you just, you wait until the pediatrician not the pediatrician, the OBGYN says that, you can tell. And, a couple months in, and you should be able to tell what the sex or the gender of the baby is. So, yeah, I don't know. I haven't done that. Let's see. I got to go back. There was a question I missed. Let's see. From Bobby. Keep going back. I don't see it. Maybe you can post it again. I'm sorry if I missed it, or maybe it didn't come through. We've got multiple questions coming through. If you've got a question, just a couple minutes here. Let's see. Just go ahead and answer the question again. Yeah, I'm not sure what it is. Let's see. Okay, they'll ask. So I'll talk about something while we're getting the question back up. I can extend it a little bit. It's no problem. I wanted to talk. So I touched on earlier about empathy, and I wanted to talk about that empathy, and I mention this in my videos a lot, and I mention it in the podcast a lot. Is that empathy is the number one parenting tool. It is, for me, if somebody was to ask me, it's like, what's the number one thing and the number one advice that you could give to a parent that helped? Is, for me, is learning empathy. And this worked with kids, it works with my spouse, it works with coworkers and vendors and customers, it works with friends. You know, I've recently had a conversation with a friend, and they were telling me about some hard stuff that they're going through, and I wasn't going to sit there and give them advice. They weren't asking for advice. They just wanted me to hear them. And it ended up being like a really good conversation because I was just there to listen, you know, and I think your spouse, typically that's what they want too. You don't have to solve everybody's problems. You've got to be there and understand it from their perspective. So when they're saying these things, and my friend was saying they're going through a really rough time and this is happening and this is happening, I was like, wow, that would be hard to go through all of that stuff at once. That's empathy. You know, I'm not trying to solve it. I'm just really, it's a lot to go through. And I could see and I could feel that if I had to go through all those things, that would be rough. That would be a hard thing. Bobby, I think I did answer that. How can I handle the challenge of being away for so long? Maybe you missed it.
No, I think you just had asked. You're just like, there was another question, but you had already answered.
I apologize. So just reiterating about being along or away so far was you've got to make up for that lost time when you get back. How do you deal with it? I think you use, video and you use pictures and you use those things as tools to maybe keep in contact and keep connection with them. So you might miss some of the early time, but live video or chats is going to be good, and just keeping abreast of what's happening and what's going on, and pictures and video is really, really helpful. But you can make up for that lost time when you get back. So and I think you'll be able to do that. And that was my story about only being able to see the child every once in a while. That was kind of do that. And Albert happens to ask a question. So we actually Thursday, today's Tuesday. Thursday, our video is how to hold a baby. So people have been asking this, and so I'm going to be doing some more instructional videos. We offer 6 safe and secure ways to hold your baby, and you figure out which way works best for you, but we give you 6 holds. So that video will be on Thursday. It's almost like I told you or asked you to ask that. I appreciate that. But the best way to hold your baby to keep them calm. So there is a technique. There's a gentleman on the internet, he's a doctor, where I don't have the baby with me anymore. We were just taking pictures in the video with the baby. But basically, the baby is face down, and you fold the arms in, and then you holding the baby face down in front of you, and sort of moving a little bit. If you look for that on YouTube, there is this video with this doctor. It's got a couple million views or so, and it's pretty incredible the hold that he does, because it's very, very simple. But I give 6 holds, and for every baby, they're a little bit different. It's what you feel comfortable with. But there's a couple of my favorites. It's they have different names. It's like the football and reverse football and some other things. And that's not to be funny, that's actually the names of them. And so I think you'll enjoy that. So that's coming out Thursday. So be on the lookout for that. Also, so again, every Tuesday, 4 o'clock Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern, we'll be here on all the channels. We've got Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, across the universe. The Thursday we release our other videos. And then we do our podcast, and we're back up to date. We're getting the podcast. We've been doing that that's what I've been doing the longest, actually, is a podcast for 4 years. So if you're into podcasts, go to the website. You can see all the episodes we've got. We just recorded episode 220 or so.
21.
So we have 220 different episodes about fathering and being a dad and everything that comes with that. So if you're into podcasts, check that out. That'll be good. So I appreciate you guys coming. This is great. As long as you guys keep coming, I'll keep doing it. So with that, I'll say we'll see you next time.